Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam. Should we start or? The thing, we're good. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, inshallah today, welcome back to the Hajjaj, and hopefully, inshallah, you enjoyed it. I'm quite sure you did. And hopefully it will leave a lasting impression. Because Hajj should leave a lasting impression. It's something that's usually done once in a lifetime. Some people do it a little bit more. But for the experiences that are weekly or daily, every salah gives you a boost to the next salah, every Jum'ah gives you a boost to the next Jum'ah, every Ramadan gives you a boost to the next Ramadan. But Hajj should leave a lasting impression, should give you a boost for the rest of your life. It is meant to be once in a lifetime. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the opportunity to go back, inshallah. Today, inshallah, we'll go over al-Wara', Bab al-Wara', or the chapter on al-Wara', or the station of al-Wara', or the gate of al-Wara'. All would be applicable. That's in the first session, and in the second session we will go over the last two prerequisites of the prayer, which are the conditions of validity of the prayer, and the last two are istiqbal al-qibla, facing the qibla, wa niyya, the intention. So Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah, in his book Manazil As-Saa'ireen, which we go over with relying on the commentary of al-Qayyim in his sharh, which is Madaarij As-Saalikeen, and some other sources and a few reflections that I add. But Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah said here under Bab al-Wara', or the chapter of al-Wara', chapter on Wara', pious conscientiousness. Pious conscientiousness, pious avoidance, pious piety, pious scrupulosity, extreme piety, avoidance. What else? How else did they translate Wara'? Wara' has been translated in so many ways. All of those translations give you a little bit of idea about what Wara' means. Pious conscientiousness may be the closest to the meaning of Wara'. It is, but also avoidance, pious avoidance is not a bad translation, is a good translation, because Wara' is about avoidance, and it is avoidance out of piety. It's avoidance out of observing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and observing the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as will be explained by Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah ta'ala. Certainly, these translations, they're good, but they may not be perfect. My entire translation is certainly not a translation of a native speaker, and it is not any native speaker. There is a native speaker like Iqbal, for instance, and there is a native speaker like al-Harawi, who actually authored books in Persian. So you could imagine when al-Harawi, who is a native Persian speaker, authoring books, al-Harawi, Sheikh al-Islam al-Harawi, a native speaker in Persian, authoring books in Persian, what that means, the level of the language. That is why if you speak Persian or you speak Urdu or one of those languages that have basically contributed to the Islamic library for many centuries, then you will have access to resources that you cannot have in English. That does not mean that English is incapable, but we did not have the level of al-Harawi, in English, or the level of al-Harawi, who is a native English speaker who's also not just at the level of al-Harawi in Islamic sciences, but at the level of al-Harawi in his mastery of the language that he will author in, and the mastery of English. So it's not any native English speaker. It is an English speaker who is at the level of al-Harawi in Persian, or the level of Iqbal in Urdu, or at the level of Ibn al-Qayyim in Arabic. And so to translate Ibn al-Qayyim's books, you may do this, you should do this, but it will take someone who has at the level, Ibn al-Qayyim in Arabic is just, matchless. So he is able to communicate the values, the Islamic values, in a beautiful language, effective communication, eloquent communication. When we have the likes of Ibn al-Qayyim in English, or al-Harawi, or Iqbal, or these luminaries who had great mastery of their native languages, then we will be able to have great English translations of the sources. And so it's not just about Islamic education, it's also about the mastery of the language. And it's not just about correctness, it's about eloquence. Certainly the rhymes, the music in Ibn al-Qayyim's language, when he explains al-Wara', cannot be transmitted by translation. So you will have to have genuine works written in English by people who have this level of mastery of the language and who are also as familiar with Islamic sciences as those scholars. Up until then, you want to read my translation and other translations that are, attempts, not more than that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam Harawi rahimahullah said, Bab al-Wara', قال الله عز وجل وثيابك فطهر, Allah Almighty said, and your clothing purify, and your clothing purify. And certainly thawb, the thawb that he is talking about here, the garment that he's talking about here, is the garment, the spiritual garment, not the physical garment, not the outside attire, but it is the inside attire. It's the garment of your nafs. Then he says, الورع توق مستقصا على حذر أو تحرج على تعظيم. Wara' is meticulous cautiousness out of worry, or scrupulosity out of glorification. So it's meticulous cautiousness. It is, to be meticulous about things, to be very careful, to be very cautious. It's the meticulousness, it's the cautiousness, it's the conscientiousness that will lead you to avoiding so many things that may be otherwise, may look okay otherwise to other people. But you will be avoiding them because of your meticulousness, because of your scrupulosity, because of your piety. You will be avoiding them. But he said that this avoidance is avoidance out of worry and glorification. It is out of worry and it is out of glorification, because many people can exercise the same level of avoidance or close to it. Many people can exercise a very great level of wara', in a sense, for self-respect. But it is not the pious wara', it is not the reward-worthy wara', unless you're doing it out of worry from the punishment of Allah or out of glorification of Allah. If you're doing it out of self-respect, that is honorable, but it is not necessarily reward-worthy. It's honorable. You do it is not a bad thing to practice wara' out of self-respect, to be a good human being, to be a decent human being, to be a conscientious human being. That is good. Is it reward-worthy? No, it's not reward-worthy unless it is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it is honorable. But if you want this to be, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you want to earn the reward of this, it has to be for the sake of Allah, and it has to be out of worry from His punishment and out of glorification. He did not say out of love, did he? He did not say out of love. And Ibn al-Qayyim points this out, and he says that love without glorification does not produce wara. Love without glorification. So basically the foundation of this is glorification. It is still true that love with glorification will produce the highest levels of wara. That's right. You need love with glorification to produce the highest levels of wara. And consistency in wara also requires love, because glorification without love, after a while, you burn out. After a while you give up. But glorification with love will produce the highest levels of wara, and consistently so. Then he says, وهو آخر مقام الزهد للعامة وأول مقام الزهد للمريد. Wara, that station of wara, which is, pious conscientiousness, is the end of the station of zuhd for the public and the beginning of it for the murid, or the seeker, the one who is on the path of purification. Okay, so that is a little bit problematic, because if you look at, if you take wara as a basic concept, yes, zuhd goes way beyond wara. If you take wara as a basic concept, which is, you first hear about wara, and the first impression the word leaves in your mind is merely avoidance, right? Avoidance. But zuhd is beyond this. Zuhd is beyond this. But if you look at all of the levels of wara that Imam al-Harawi himself will discuss, you will find that wara is not beneath zuhd at all. Because at the last levels of wara, al-Daraj As-Saalikeen, the third level, is avoiding dispersion, attachment to distractions, interferences that will detract from your togetherness with Allah. To avoid all interferences that will detract from your togetherness with Allah. That's it. That's the final level. That's the final phase. You cannot imagine anyone beyond this phase. So in this way, in this sense, if you look at how this comprehensive explanation of wara is not less than zuhd. Wara is not a lower level than zuhd. They overlap. And it is expected for all of these things to overlap. Expected or not expected. Because the objective, the pursuit, the goal is one. These are all gates to the same palace. These are all gates to the same palace. Jannah has 8 gates. The plurality of the gates does not negate the singularity of the pursuit. The plurality of the gates of Jannah, the plurality of the stations that we talk about here. We talk about wara, we talk about ikhbat, we talk about reliance, we talk about inaba, return to Allah. And all of those stations, the plurality of the stations does not really negate the fact that the objective, the goal is one. And you do want, basically, the plurality of the stations are about the human condition. The human condition. So from your end, these are plural stations. These are multiple stations. That multiplicity is from your end. But from the other end, at the end of your goal, the end of your objective, Allah's end, they all converge. They all converge. And it is all about Tawheed. It is all about the oneness of Allah. It's all about the singularity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus the multiplicity or the plurality of the creations and the created phenomena and the stations and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it is all about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is expected that all of those stations will converge, will overlap, and at the end, they will all be the same thing. At the end, it will all be the same thing. But if you want to understand why Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah said that wara is the end of the station of zuhd for the public and the beginning of it for the murid, the seeker, Imam Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentioned the definition of wara that Ibn al-Qayyim considers to be very comprehensive. Wara and zuhd, it highlights the difference between wara and zuhd, where he said that wara is the avoidance of everything that will harm you in the hereafter. Zuhd is the avoidance of everything that will not benefit you in the hereafter. That's a beautiful, basically, statement that discerns between them, and that shows you why Imam al-Harawi considered wara to be a level below zuhd. So wara is the avoidance of everything that will harm you in the hereafter. Zuhd is the avoidance of everything that will not benefit you in the hereafter. Then he said, وَهُوَ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ دَرَجَاتٍ, and it is 3 levels. Wara is 3 levels. The darajat that he will talk about here are different from the expected levels that will be usually mentioned when it comes to wara. But I want you to be also cognizant of the expected, usual, classical levels of wara. The first one is to avoid haram. And the scholars disagree whether this is wara or not, because it's an obligation. But it is still wara. You cannot really avoid makruh until you have avoided haram. So you want to consider this to be the first level of wara, which is the avoidance of haram. And then the second level is the avoidance of makruh and shubuhat. Makruh and doubtful matters, dubious matters. That's the second level. At the third level, you'll be avoiding much of the mubah, permissible things. You'll be avoiding excesses of mubah, fudul al-mubahat. You'll be avoiding excesses of mubah or permissible things. But he has a different way of, not necessarily that different, but a different angle, a different perspective. So the first level that Imam al-Harawi mentioned, he said, الدرجة الأولى تجنب القبائح. The first level is the avoidance of ugly conduct. Qabih is ugly, right? Qaba'ih, ugly behaviors, ugly conduct. But maybe I should have said that which is ugly, because it would be more comprehensive to say avoidance of that which is ugly versus ugly conduct, for 2 reasons. But it's beautiful to mention al-qaba'ih. Anything that takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qabih, is ugly. And Plato said the beauty is the splendor of truth. Beauty is the splendor of truth. Does this have any relevance in our teachings? Absolutely. Beauty is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jameel yuhibbul jamal. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah jameel yuhibbul jamal." Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. So beauty is the splendor of truth. And it is important for us Muslims to recognize this, that the truth produces beauty. And that applies to even beauty in your choices, beauty in your attire, beauty in everything, beauty in your furniture, beauty in your cleanliness, beauty in your organization. It is about beauty. Like to leave your desk messy. That's not beautiful, is it? Is this a beautiful sight? To walk into, your bedroom, and if your mother walks in your bedroom and she's always shocked by the sight of your bedroom, then that means that you have a problem. You have a problem in the appreciation of beauty. And having a problem in the appreciation of beauty may be related to having a problem in the appreciation of truth. They are interconnected. Beauty and truth are interconnected. And the appreciation of beauty is is very important for the appreciation of truth. Your natural inclination is such that you would appreciate beauty and truth. And if your natural inclination is corrupted, you may be having difficulty, you may be challenged in appreciating both. So if you have a challenge in appreciating beauty, you may be having challenge also in appreciating truth. Correct? So when there is emphasis on beauty in our culture, you know, in our modern civilization, there is emphasis on beauty. But the emphasis on beauty is incomplete because it's emphasis on physical beauty only. But beauty is not limited to physical beauty. Physical beauty is part of beauty. But beauty is about moral beauty, it's about spiritual beauty, and there is not much emphasis on beauty in this holistic sense. And that is deficiency. But the very fact that there is emphasis on beauty is positive, not negative. Because that may indicate that there is some fitra remaining, you know, or the appreciation of beauty. When you see like beautiful art or you see something like this, the appreciation of beauty, it indicates that there is something still remaining. Some of the fitra is still remaining, which is a good thing, to build on it, you know, and redirect it and enhance it, not to fight it, but you want to redirect it, rechannel it, and enhance it. But the usage of the word qaba'ih, that which is ugly, is beautiful, because certainly beauty is an important value. Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. So, but why is it better to say that which is ugly versus ugly conduct? Because that which is ugly may include also non-conduct, inaction. Inaction could be ugly. And that's another aspect of wara that we must be aware of. Wara is usually perceived as avoidance of certain actions, right? But what about inaction? Could inaction be just as ugly as action? Yeah. وقد يعد الصمت أحيانا من الكذب. That silence sometimes is a lie. When you're silent, when you need to speak, that's lying, in a sense. So inaction could be also ugly. For instance, you know, whatever hardship our, you know, brothers and sisters from the Rohingya minority are going through, basically inaction, you should have wara from inaction. You should have done something. You should have said something. You should have at least made dua if you're completely incapable. But most of us are capable of doing a little bit more than dua. And if you're not capable of donating, then maybe you're capable of urging donation. وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. And he does not urge the feeding of the needy. That is أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ إِنَّهُ كَانَ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ الْعَظِيمِ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. So have you seen the one who does not, you know, who denies or rejects the deen or the day of judgment? It is the one who repels the orphan and does not urge the feeding of the needy. So if we have not done anything, then basically we have no wara. Because wara should have prevented you from inaction. Just like wara should prevent you from ugly action, wara should prevent you from ugly inaction. And that is why he said the first level is the avoidance of al-qaba'ih, that which is ugly. He says, you avoid al-qaba'ih, that which is ugly, لِصَوْنِ النَّفْس, for the protection of oneself, وَتَوْفِيرِ الْحَسَنَات, the growing and preservation of good deeds, وصيانة الإيمان, and the safeguarding of Iman. The protection of oneself, it is understandable. And you should have self-respect. And you should be keen on protecting your integrity and protecting particularly your spiritual dignity and protecting your status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to protect oneself, that is the part of egotism that we do need. Egotism is not always bad, because your survival, your salvation is dependent on some level of egotism, wanting the benefit of that self. I want your benefit. I am keeping you from this, or I'm pushing you to do that because I want your benefit. That is called egotism. It's not altruism, it's egotism, because it's about yourself. And that is egotism that we want to keep, because it is necessary for your survival. It is necessary for your salvation. It is necessary for فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ, then escape to Allah. You're escaping to Allah to save that self. And that is egotism that we want, for the protection of oneself. وَتَوْفِيرِ الْحَسَنَاتِ, the growing and preservation of good deeds. You do need to, avoidance of ugliness. Avoidance of ugliness is important for the growing and the preservation of your good deeds for two reasons. One, ugly conduct will distract you from good conduct. Two, ugly conduct will ruin your حسنات. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا أعمالكم. O you who believe, do not ruin, invalidate your deeds. Then he said وصيانة الإيمان, and the safeguarding of Iman, because Iman يزيد بالطاعة وينقص بالعصيان. Iman increases with obedience and decreases with disobedience. And if you want to protect your Iman, you do want to avoid all ugliness. One of the scholars said, if you ever pray a prayer with khushu', and the next prayer you lose that khushu', trace your steps back from that prayer to the previous one, you will find that you had done something that basically stripped you of khushu'. Just trace your steps back. Because like if you pray Dhuhr with khushu', and you have this heartful presence, or hudur al-qalb, and then Asr comes, and you're trying to get your heart, to be present, and it's being rebellious, كَدَّابَّةِ الْحَرُونَ, like a disobedient mount or beast of burden. You just can't get it to follow orders or to move with you in the direction that you want. And so what happened to this heart? Something must have happened that basically make you lose that khushu'. So safeguarding of Iman. Then he talks about الدرجة الثانية, which is the second level. He says الدرجة الثانية حفظ الحدود عندما لا بأس به. The second level is to stay within the bounds of that which is harmless. لا بأس به, that which is harmless. But I don't think that he really meant this, because he is probably talking about at this level about a lot more than this. Keeping those bounds, keeping yourself not within the bounds between harmful and harmless, keeping yourself way before those bounds. So I'm translating this literally, or because that's really to stay faithful to the source, I have to translate it this way. But I think that Imam al-Harawi meant more than just staying away from that which is harmful. حفظ الحدود عندما لا بأس به, staying within the bounds of that which is harmless. I think that he meant that you move those bounds, closer to that, to the core of that which is halal, that which is pure, that which is wholesome, farther away from that border, because that border is a border that you want to stay away from. You all know Hadith Nu'man ibn Bashir, إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهات لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. Halal is clear and haram is clear, and between them there are dubious, doubtful matters that are not known by many people. So what he meant probably, he meant that those doubtful matters are all with that which is harmful. So harmful here does not only mean haram, but it means doubtful matters. And I also believe that he meant that harmful here is also excesses of mubah. Excesses of mubah. Excess of sleep, excess of basically possessions, material possessions, excesses of mubah in general. So that would be more befitting of that level, which is a daraja thaniya, that intermediate level, or a daraja thaniya, or the second level. And he said that you do this ibqa'an ala siyanati wa taqwa, ibqa'an ala siyanati wa taqwa, to maintain integrity and piety. Siyana is integrity, taqwa is piety, to maintain your integrity and piety. He did not say to reach, he did not say to accomplish, he said to maintain, because this has been already accomplished in the first level. But now, you know, it is harder to maintain your status than to reach it, right? To get to a point is easier than to stay at that level. To get to a level is much easier than staying at that level. So maintaining that integrity, that consistency, you know, in showing proper conduct and in showing integrity and in showing spiritual dignity is basically why you should be avoiding all things harmful. That would include haram, would include makruh, would include dubious, doubtful matters, shubuhat, and will include also excesses of mubah or fudul al-mubahat. And then he said, وَصُعُودًا عَلَى الدَّنَاءَ. You know, you're avoiding all of this to maintain your integrity and piety and to rise above lowliness. To rise above lowliness. وَتَخَلُّصًا عَنْ اقْتِحَامِ الْحُدُودِ, and to avoid trespassing the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is basically كالراعي يرعى حول الحمى يوشك أن يقع فيه. It is basically like you're trying to keep a distance, you're trying to keep a margin of safety between you and haram so that you do not end up trespassing the bounds of Allah. You're staying far from them. You're keeping your sheep far from the property lines of your neighbor, you know, the farm of your neighbor. You keep your sheep way from the property lines of the farm of your neighbor because you are afraid that if you allow your sheep to get too close to the property line, they may trespass because you don't have complete control over your sheep, just like you don't have complete control over your nafs. So instead of grazing your sheep next to the property line, no, bring your sheep farther away from the property line. Keep a margin of safety. The wider the margin of safety is, the safer you will be. The less likelihood your sheep will trespass into the property of your neighbor and ruin their farm. Then he says, وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّالِثَةُ التَّوَرُّعُ عَنْ كُلِّ دَاعِيَةٍ تَدْعُو إِلَى شَتَاتِ الْوَقْتِ وَالتَّعَلُّقِ بِالتَّفَرُّقِ وَعَارِضٍ يُعَارِضُ حَالَ الْجَمْعِ. وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّالِثَةُ, the third level, التَّوَرُّعُ عَنْ كُلِّ دَاعِيَةٍ تَدْعُو إِلَى, is avoiding any call to شَتَاتِ الْوَقْتِ, dispersion. شَتَاتِ الْوَقْتِ, dispersion. The second one is related to shatat al-waqt, which is التعلق بالتفرق, attachment to distractions. Because once you have this state of dispersion is basically when you start to notice the plurality of the created phenomena and the creations, and that distracts you from the singularity of your objective, your goal, your pursuit, your, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is, and observing the plurality of the creations and created phenomena is important, because it is part of our human conditions. Part of our human condition is that this plurality around us. That's why we have many stations. That's why the Jannah has many gates. That is why we. But to observe all of this, it's like the example that I gave before, which is the ant and the carpet maker. The ant walks on the carpet and sees, heights and valleys and different colors and so on, and the design is completely bewildering. The design is completely bewildering. That bewilderment, she can put all that bewilderment to rest if she trusts the carpet maker. The carpet maker is seeing the beautiful design. If you're looking at the carpet, if the carpet maker is looking at the carpet maker is seeing the beautiful design. The ant cannot comprehend the beautiful design. Can the ant comprehend the beautiful design? Can the ant have a bird's view of the carpet? The ant cannot have a bird's view of the carpet. So the ant, she sees different colors, things are like lighter colors, and then she runs into black, and then red, and then this, and ups and downs, and so on, and it's completely bewildering. That diversity, that divergence, that plurality is important to keep track of, because you do need to navigate your way through this plurality. But the destination, the objective, the goal is singular, is one. That is Tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So but when this plurality distracts you from observing your final destination, your one final destination, your ultimate pursuit, your one pursuit, the maker, the origin, the source. The source is one, the maker is one. The cause, the ultimate effector is one. So when you see the multiplicity of causes, and that distracts you from the unity, singularity, oneness of the ultimate effector and the maker and the beginner and al-Fatir and al-Khaliq, the creator, that could have devastating effect on your heart. That's a form of shirk. Because if it distracts you from the one, that's a form of shirk. But at the same time, are you completely oblivious to this plurality? No. Sometimes also when you exaggerate in emphasis on one end of this equation, that exaggeration could lead you to very dangerous places. Because the oneness, the singularity of the cause, the origin, the source, the maker, the creator, the objective, the goal, should not basically blind you from the plurality of the created phenomena, and plurality even when it comes to the desires, his murad, his desires of you, his demands of you. He wants you, when a guest comes, he wants you to entertain the guest. He wants, he does not want you to sit down and make dhikr and abandon your guest. He wants you to entertain the guest. So that is the function of this time, the function of this circumstance. That's plurality. There is also al-amr wa nahi, and that is where it gets to be very dangerous. And there is also al-qadar al-kawni wa al-qadar al-shar'i. These are two concepts. If you don't observe the plurality in them, then, or the difference, or the variance, or the divergence between al-amr wa nahi, the command and the prohibition. So some and this, we cannot attribute this to Sufism, but we can attribute it to extreme Sufism. And we can attribute it also to careless Sufism, because careless Sufism can lead to extreme Sufism. If you are not careful about what you're teaching, you could leave room for extremists or outright deviant people to misuse what you are saying, to abuse the concepts that you're preaching. So to have clarity about the variance, divergence, the difference between al-amr wa nahi, the commands and the prohibitions, is important so that you show proper response to the commands of Allah and His prohibitions. But to say that everything that happens in this universe is from Him, and He's the origin, and He's the causer, and He's the ultimate effector, therefore there is no difference between anything, and all things are the same. And then they condemn you for being a mushrik, because you're observing the plurality between al-amr and nahi. You were observing the difference between al-amr and nahi. You're observing the difference between some of the awamir, and having to prioritize between the awamir of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala themselves, because they come at different levels. So to think that this is a form of shirk because it takes away from your feeling of oneness with Tawheed, or your recognition of His singularity, then that is obviously dangerous, and that's blasphemous, and that is zandaqa, because it could lead to defiance of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to be careful, and at the end of the day, the brightest beacon of light is the Prophet and his companions. The unfailing measuring stick is the Prophet and his companions. Were they indifferent? No, they were not indifferent to all of these phenomena. They observed the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They stayed away from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They also fought al-aqdar by al-aqdar. They also resisted al-qadar ran away from al-qadar to al-qadar, because they know that, can you say, for instance, and that is also, that's also important, that you understand that you resist qadar by qadar. That they resisted Quraysh, they fought against Quraysh, they went to the battlefield, the Prophet and his companions. So when someone comes, at one point, and certainly we cannot, كذبت والله إن ادعيت ذلك. I would be lying by Allah if I claimed that Sufism necessarily brings about these bad phenomena, because it doesn't. Sufism is essential for the tazkiyah, the purification of the heart is essential for the seeker. But it is when you corrupt it, it is when you're not careful, you allow room for people to corrupt it and to deviate, that we could eventually get some Sufi masters in Algeria, and this was reported by someone who is people that are extremely truthful, like Ibn Badis and Muhammad al-Bashir al-Brahimi and other scholars, who were at the forefront of the resistance movement against the French occupation. And when they got some Sufi masters to tell them that what you're doing is a form of disbelief, resisting the French occupation is a form of disbelief, because France is the qadar of Allah. Had it not been His pleasure, His liking, He would have not given France power over you. He gave them power over you because it was His. Now, you could be extreme and say that you look at what Sufism produces, but Sufism also produced the Sunusiya in Libya, who resisted the Italian occupation, and Umar al-Mukhtar also, who resisted the Italian. So that is corrupted versions of Sufism. But the plurality and singularity, ultimately, you do want to be focused on the singularity of the source, the origin, the creator, the maker, the objective, your goal, your destination. You want to be focused. Observing the plurality and being bewildered by the plurality and the created phenomena and all the things that are happening around you without going back and finding comfort in all of this coming from, the source, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the end of the day, you do want to find comfort that all of this is under His control. All of this is under His control. And that is what al-Khadr taught Musa alayhi salam. That you're being, yes, it is confusing. Yes, making this hole in the ship does not really look right. Or killing that little boy does not look right. But he was trying to tell him that you're not able to see the master plan, because whatever knowledge that has been given to you is limited, and that is Musa, one of ulul azm of ar-rusul. Whatever knowledge that has been given to you is limited. So try to submit to the aqdar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sense of finding comfort. You do your best, you take your precautions, you act upon His commands, you avoid His prohibitions, and then you find comfort deep inside your heart. You know that everything that is happening is under His control. Not just under His control, is created by Him, is caused by Him. So between this and that, you are trying to find your path to Him Azza wa Jal. So avoiding dispersion is recognizing the singularity of the goal, the objective, the destination, and avoiding attachment to distractions, because once you're too focused on the causes, on the created phenomena, on the plurality of the existences around you, it will take you away from, it can have devastating effect. Keep in mind that when Iblis looked at Adam, he saw what? When Iblis was told to prostrate before Adam, what did he see? He saw the plurality. At the end of the day, he saw the plurality. He saw the difference between him and Adam. Diversions. He saw the difference between him and Adam. He was very limited because he saw only the dust or the mud or the clay in Adam, whichever phase. But لم أكن لأسجد لبشر خلقته من صلصال من حمأ مسنون. It's not befitting for me to prostrate before a human being that He created of salsal, clay, because I am better. He saw the difference. He did not. All that he saw in Adam is the exterior form. He did not see the spirit of Adam. He did not see why Adam was honored, why the angels were. But should he have looked at this? Should he have looked beyond the physical form of Adam, the clay, looked deeper? But even if he stopped there, he would have not, he would have not had a grasp of the whole truth. He should have looked at one thing: the singularity of this order prostrate before Adam has nothing to do with Adam. It is an order from God. Has nothing to do with that. The fact that you're distracted now by Adam and you're looking at the clay, you lost it. You did not recognize the singularity. The source of this order is the one creator, the one maker of all things. So this is a huge failure, and we should not fail like Iblis failed. You don't want to only be deeper in your thinking and look beyond the clay. You want to be the deepest in your thinking and look beyond all things and recognize the singularity, the oneness, the unity of the source. Then eventually he said interferences, you should also avoid interferences that detract from your togetherness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your togetherness with Allah, if we understand this correctly, entertaining the guest will be your togetherness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not necessarily your togetherness in the hadra, in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in your dhikr, in your dark bedroom, making dhikr. Entertaining the guest is togetherness with muradillah mink, with what Allah wants of you, not what you want of Him. Because maybe what you want of Him is this, is the pleasure of this dhikr in the, at this time. But that is your want, that is your desire, that is muraduk min, that is what you want of him. But what he wants of you at this time is to entertain your guest. And entertaining your guest, I am not talking about, go pray the Salat al-Isha, or I'm talking about something, but just merely entertaining your guest. Entertaining your guest could be muradullah mink at the time you are being visited by a guest. So you revolve around muradu mink, not muradak min. You revolve around his want of you, not your want of him. Finally, I have like a few comments, and inshallah, salah will be, the last two prerequisites will be shorter, so we'll take a few minutes from the salah time. But I have a few comments that I included in the document that I sent you about the concept of wara. Because in all honesty, the da'is, preachers, imams have to understand the difficulties and the challenges that people go through in our times and in our place. You have to be aware of the challenges that people go through, because when you talk to people about unattainable objectives, you cause them despair. You cause them to just give up, to throw the towel. It's just, you're talking to me about leaving 9/10 of that which is halal out of fear of falling into that which is haram, when I can hardly avoid haram. So you're talking to me about keeping a margin of safety that is just unattainable. Are you from here? Even if you work as an imam of a masjid, are you really sure about your money being all halal? So it is very important that you're aware of the reality, so that you're not basically pointing out an unrealistic objective to the people, because at the end of the day, yes, you may want to keep this there somewhere, tell them that the Sahaba used to do this. This is at the end of the road for whoever can get to it at one point, when they are capable, spiritually capable. They went through the spiritual exercise. You see, when Yahya ibn Mu'adh was asked, متى أدخل حانوت التوكل وألبس رداء الزهد, and he said, when can I put on the garment of zuhd and just walk into the store of tawakkul, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he said, if Allah keeps his provisions from you for 3 days and you find no anxiety in your heart, you may attempt it. But then if you go 3 days without food, without sustenance, without anything, and you start to feel anxious, then you're not ready. So it's about what you're ready for. So the first point is that wara, the concept of wara itself, is important for all people at all times. We cannot just give up on the concept of wara because we live in hard times. The Prophet ﷺ, Hadith Nu'man ibn Bashir that I just mentioned, and Hadith Hasan ibn Ali radiallahu anhu, دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك, leave that which is doubtful, that which causes you doubt, to that which does not cause you doubt. This is important. This is an essential ingredient of our religious practice. The concept of wara, the concept of conscientiousness, pious conscientiousness, to be conscientious about your choices, and about your earnings, and about everything, about your choices in general. So this concept is important. The second, fake wara is disgraceful. Fake wara, like everything fake, like everything that is genuine, that's not genuine, is disgraceful. And the Imam Ahmad, they used to use each other's ink pots, and this is a beautiful example. But there are many examples, all from Imam Ahmad also. Not all, I know many examples from Imam Ahmad. But Imam Ahmad, they used to use each other's ink pots, but Imam Ahmad did not do this out of wara. But when a student asked him for permission to use his ink pot, a student wanted to use the ink pot, so he asked Imam Ahmad for permission. He said to him, هذا ورع مظلم. This is dark wara. Dark meaning flawed. This is just dirty wara. You're not there. You're not there. Everyone in your level is using everybody's input. So you're not there. Do not pretend it. Do not fake it. Just be like your friends. Do not fake it. When you get there, and then one time someone did the same thing, and Imam Ahmad said to him, لم يبلغ ورعي ولا ورعك ذاك القدر, or as he said, my wara and your qara is not at this level. Certainly Imam Ahmad's wara was at this level, but he did not want to tell him that you're not there, I'm there. So he wanted to say to him, both of us are not there, but don't fake it. Faking it is disgraceful. And faking it can basically throw you back 100 miles, you know, and take away from your wara a great deal. Relativity is real, and relativity is real. Relativity means what? الرجل منهم كخمسين رجل أو أجر الرجل منهم. In reports he said الرجل منهم كخمسين رجل قالوا منا أو منهم يا رسول الله قال بل منكم. That one of them is like 50 of you. That concept that when things become hard, different parameters may apply. That concept that it was reported by Tirmidhi radiallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إنكم في زمان من ترك منكم معشار أو عشرة ما أمر به هلك ويأتي على الناس زمان من عمل منهم بعشر ما أمر به نجا. You are now in a time when if one of you leaves out 1/10 of what they were commanded to do, they will be destroyed, and there will come a time when they perform 1/10 of that which they were commanded to perform, they will survive. They will survive. They will survive on performing 1/10. But this should not basically ruin the cause of this whole discussion. You know, so you should not indulge in haram. With all of our cautiousness, we're not getting to 1/100th of what the Sahaba used to be, where the Sahaba used to be, with all of our cautiousness. So exercise as much cautiousness as you can, but understand that the levels that the Sahaba reached may be unattainable by us for our circumstances. This hadith is controversial in authenticity. Some scholars authenticated this hadith. However, the concept itself is a valid concept. It's a legal maxim. إذا ضاق الأمر اتسع. إذا ضاق الأمر اتسع means what in fiqh, in قواعد الفقهية or legal maxims. إذا ضاق الأمر اتسع. ضاق when the affairs, ضاق when it becomes tight, it becomes wide. When it constricts, it eases. When it becomes tight, it becomes wide, it becomes loose. Meaning it has to be loosened by the scholars. It has to be eased by the scholars. When things become tight on people, the scholars need to ease them. So that concept is also an important concept that we have to be aware of. Picking concessions on wara, to pick concessions from the different madhahib, is not against wara. It's against the highest levels of wara, yes. So if you want basically to be safe according to all of the madhahib, and you consider this to be of the highest levels of wara, true. But picking concessions from the madhahib is permissible according to the majority of the scholars. إذا لم يصل إلى درجة الانحلال. You know, as al-Munawi says in Fayd al-Qadir, and he reports this from others, and he reports this from al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam and others, and that's the position in the Shafi'i madhab. In the Hanafi madhab, there are in the Hanbali madhab, in fact, in the Hanbali madhab, according to Abu Ya'la, there is a report that picking concessions all the time from all of the mujtahideen is permissible. And they consider this to be the explicit statement of Imam Ahmad. But certainly moderation is good. And excessiveness in this regard could lead to inhilal, could lead to basically losing your religious commitment if you're picking all the time. But picking concessions, picking needed concessions from valid mujtahideen, picking needed concessions from valid mujtahideen is permissible according to the vast majority of the scholars. There are certain conditions that we may discuss some other time, such as when you do not compose a position that is repulsive according to all of them, or you do not do this on regular basis to reach the level of inhilal, or you do not use double standard, where you apply one standard to yourself and one standard to other people. So shufa'a, so if you want to sell your house and you say to your neighbor, I can sell my house to whomever I please, and there is no preemptive right, you don't have a preemptive right. And then when your neighbor wants to sell their house, you tell them, no, there is preemptive right, and then you use different positions in your favor all the time. That is repulsive, unacceptable by anyone. But picking concessions, the needed concessions, is permissible according to the majority of the scholars. A plan of action is to leave that which is haram, then to leave the shubuhat and leave that which is haram first. Make sure that, because wara also requires some knowledge to prioritize, leave that which is haram, and then leave the shubuhat that pertain to people's rights. If you are a business partner with someone, exercise wara there. If you have disagreement over $5,000, exercise as much wara as you can there. Leave as much as you can to your partner, and in this way you will be safe from having any demands by the people, because people will not give up on their demands, and they will not forgive, and they will not pardon like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Then leave the makruh that takes away from your integrity and your spiritual dignity. The lowly makruh behaviors, leave those that will take away from your integrity and your spiritual dignity. Then what's considered to be sub-ethical in your society, that's consideration of norms and consideration of customs. Because when you commit that which is sub-ethical in your society, you're not only harming yourself, you're also harming your deen. You're also harming your deen. Then as your state of iman rises, advance is tolerated. Advance is tolerated, meaning do not jump phases. Do not basically, do not take more than you can handle. Advance is tolerated while watching your wara and verifying that it is sincere and genuine, not fake in any way. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.